Three small creatures sat in the corner of a metal cage. Their scales were pure white, so white they almost glowed under bright station lights. They pressed against each other to stay warm and feel safe. Their red eyes moved quickly, looking at every sound they heard. Around them, the breeding facility was busy with workers and visitors, but nobody came near their corner. They were alone. The Scareen species was famous across 12 star systems. They were strong and smart fighters. Many families wanted to adopt Scareen babies because they would grow up to be powerful warriors and guards. Every year, the space station above their home planet made hundreds of baby Scareen. Rich families from different worlds paid lots of money to take these babies home. But nobody wanted these three white ones. A female worker brought them food every day. She never looked at them when she came. She pushed a food tray through a small opening and walked away fast. It was like she thought their white color was a sickness she might catch. The three albino babies had learned not to make noise or ask for attention. When they did, the workers only moved faster to get away from them. In the main nursery room, their brothers and sisters played together. Those babies had normal green and brown scales that looked healthy and shiny. People visited every day to look at them. They checked that the babies were smart, strong, and perfect. The three white ones could hear happy chirping sounds and clicking noises from the adults who liked what they saw. But nobody came to look at them. Nobody wanted them. The oldest of the three was a male with a scar on his nose. He got the scar from fighting his own reflection in the shiny wall. He watched the door all the time. He had stopped hoping weeks ago, but he still could not stop looking. His younger brother walked in circles over and over. He had worn a path in the thin blanket they were given. Their sister sat very still, saving her energy. Her smart mind already understood what was happening to them better than her brothers did. The hatchery master named Vel came to see them every few days. He was a huge Scareen, almost 8 feet tall. His scales were deep green like emeralds, and he had special scars that showed his high rank. He would stare at the white babies with his gold eyes and shake his head slowly. To him, they were a mistake, something wrong with his perfect facility. Defects, he said during his last visit. 30 days. If nobody takes them, we will dispose of them. It is a kind thing to do. The three babies understood enough of the Scareen language to know what dispose meant. It meant they would be killed. They pressed closer together that night. The youngest brother made small, sad sounds until his sister bit his ear to make him stop. Showing that they were scared only made things worse. Days passed slowly in their small cage. They got nutrition paced 2 times each day and water that tasted like metal. Once every week, a medical robot scanned them through the bars. It checked to make sure they were not sick with something that might spread to the valuable babies. The robot never came inside their cage. Everything about their life told them they were dirty and worthless. Other species visited the breeding facility too. Rich humans came, along with merchants and even strange crystal beings that floated in the air. They all stopped to look at the strong Scareen babies. Some pointed at the 3 white ones in their corner and asked questions. The workers always said the same thing: genetic defects, not suitable for adoption, scheduled for removal. Most visitors nodded and walked away. A few looked sad, but they did not argue. After all, who were they to question Scareen tradition? The 3 babies made their own language using tail movements and eye blinks. They stopped trying to talk to workers, who ignored them. The oldest brother stayed awake at night, watching for any sign of the disposal team coming. The younger brother organized their small space over and over, moving their one-worn blanket around. The sister spent hours watching the facility through gaps in their cage. She memorized when workers came and went and where they walked. They were smart, maybe smarter than their normal brothers and sisters. But being smart did not matter when everyone hated them for being different. On the 23rd day of counting down to their death, something changed. A ship arrived at the station's main port. The white babies did not pay attention at first. Ships came and went all the time. But this ship was different. It carried humans, and humans always acted different from other species. They were curious about everything. They touched things others ignored and asked questions that seemed silly to more advanced races. One human wandered away from her tour group. She was small, even for a human, with brown skin and long dark hair tied back. Her clothes showed she was young, not an adult yet. She carried a small recording device and seemed interested in every detail of the breeding facility. The workers were busy with the tour group in the main nursery. Nobody noticed when the girl slipped down a side hallway. She was reading signs about screen development when she turned a corner and found the isolation wing. The 3 white babies saw her before she saw them. Their sister made a warning sound, and all 3 scrambled to the back of their cage. They tried to make themselves as small as possible. Humans were rare visitors, but they still meant the same thing as everyone else: disappointment and rejection. But this human did not walk past. She stopped right in front of their cage, and her eyes went wide. For a long moment, the girl and the babies stared at each other. The babies waited to see disgust or pity in her face. Instead, the human smiled. It was a real smile, not the fake kind they sometimes saw from workers. She got down on her knees to be at their level, making herself smaller and less scary. "Hello there," she said softly in the human language. "Why are you all alone back here?" The babies did not understand her words, but they understood her voice. It did not have rejection or hate in it, just curiosity and something else they had never felt before: kindness. The girl pressed her hand against the clear barrier. The sister felt something push her forward. Slowly, she reached out one small claw and touched the barrier from her side. Their hands matched through the wall. Behind them, angry voices called out. The workers had noticed their missing guest. The girl stood up quickly, but before she left, she looked back at the 3 white babies one more time. "I will come back," she whispered, though they could not understand. "I promise." For the first time since they were born, the 3 white babies felt something other than fear and sadness. They did not have a word for it yet, but humans called a hope. Lily Brooks came back to the isolation wing the next morning. She carried a bag of supplies from the human ship. She had barely slept all night. Her mind kept thinking about the 3 white babies locked in that cold cage. Her parents were in meetings with station officials, so she had 2 hours before anyone would miss her. The 3 white babies rushed to the front of their cage when they saw her coming. Their red eyes followed her every movement with desperate hope. Lily got down on her knees and slowly unpacked her bag. She had brought a soft blanket, some dried fruit from the ship, and several picture books she loved when she was younger. She pushed the blanket through the narrow food slot. The sisters sniffed it carefully before dragging it to their sleeping corner. The fabric was soft and clean, nothing like the rough material they had before. All 3 babies immediately curled up on it, their tails wrapped around each other. Lily opened the first book and held it against the clear barrier so they could see the pictures. She read slowly, pointing to each image. There was a dog playing in a yard, children laughing together, and a family eating dinner. The babies watched with complete focus. Their heads tilted as they looked at the colorful drawings. Over the next few days, Lily made a routine. She would sneak away from a human delegation's activities and spend every free moment with the white babies. She brought them better food, though she had to be careful not to let the workers see. She drew pictures in a notebook and showed them simple words in both English and Screen language. The babies learned very quickly. Within 1 week, they understood basic commands like sit, come, and stay. Lily began giving them names based on their white coloring. The older, careful brother became Ash. The energetic younger brother was Frost. The smart sister was Snow. When Lily spoke their names, the babies made excited chirping sounds. They had never had individual names before. The facility only gave them a number. Having names meant they were real people, not just broken things nobody wanted. Hatchery Master Vel found Lily during her 2nd week of visits. He walked into the isolation wing with 2 workers beside him. His massive body blocked the light. "Human child," he said in English with a heavy accent. "You waste your time with genetic failures. These creatures are scheduled for disposal in 8 days. Lily stood up and looked at him without fear. "Why? What did they do wrong?" Vel's scales rippled with annoyance. "They are albino, weak, not suitable for any proper Screen family. It is merciful to end their suffering before they burden anyone. They don't look like they're suffering, Lily said. She pointed to the 3 babies who were now playing gently with a toy she had brought. They look smart and healthy. You understand nothing of our culture, Vel said coldly, but I will allow these visits to continue. Let everyone see that even rejects are too worthless for human pity. He turned and left. His tail scraped the floor as he walked away. But his words gave Lily an idea. If she could prove that the white babies had value, if she could show they were not broken at all, maybe she could save them. She started recording her time with them. She documented how quickly they learned, how they solved simple puzzles she created, and how they worked together to overcome challenges. The babies began to trust her completely. Frost would press against the barrier when she arrived, making happy clicking sounds. Ash watched over his brother and sister, but slowly relaxed when Lily was there. Snow would bring Lily small gifts through the food slot. She brought pebbles and scraps of shiny material she found in the cage. Lily taught them more English words. Friend, safe, stay together. She told them stories about Earth, about oceans and forests and cities full of different people living side by side. The babies listened with rapt attention. Their world was growing bigger than the metal walls they had always known. By the 3rd week, they could communicate in simple sentences using a mix of Screen and English words plus hand movements. Snow was especially gifted with language. She put together complex ideas that surprised even Lily. Why we different bad? Snow asked one day. Her small claws tapped out the question mark pattern Lily had taught her. Lily struggled to explain prejudice to a child who had only experienced it, never understood it. Different is not bad, she said firmly. Different is just different. Some people fear what they don't understand, but that's their problem, not yours. The deadline got closer. 5 days remained, then 4, then 3. Lily's parents noticed she was distracted during meals. They asked what was troubling her. She had been afraid to tell them. She worried they would stop her visits or say her concerns didn't matter. But with time running out, she had no choice. That evening, she brought them to the isolation wing. Dr. Helen Brooks and Dr. Robert Brooks were scientists who had studied dozens of species in their careers. They looked at the white babies with professional curiosity that quickly turned to amazement. These cognitive scores are remarkable, Helen said quietly. She was running tests on her handheld scanner. They're testing well above average for their age group. Robert was watching Snow solve a complex puzzle box. The albinism hasn't affected their brain development at all. If anything, they may be slightly more advanced compared to standard screen juveniles. Can we adopt them? Lily asked. Her voice shook with hope. Can we take them with us when we leave? Her parents looked at each other for a long moment. Helen spoke carefully. Lily, the Screen don't allow aliens to adopt their young. It's a fundamental law in their culture. Even these 3 marked for disposal are still considered Screen property. Then we have to change the law, Lily said stubbornly, or find a way around it. We can't just let them die because of stupid prejudice. Robert put his hand on his daughter's shoulder. We will try, but you need to understand the complications. These babies will grow to be 8 feet tall and live for over a century. They need special diet and environment. Taking them is a commitment we may not be able to fulfill. I don't care, Lily said. They're my friends. Friends don't abandon each other. Her parents saw the determination in her eyes and recognized it. They had raised their daughter to value compassion and justice. How could they tell her to ignore those principles now? Helen scheduled a meeting with the station council for the next day. Robert began researching Screen adoption law, looking for any precedent or loophole. Lily went back to the isolation wing and told the 3 babies that help was coming. Trust, she said, making the sign they had learned. We will find a way. But trust was hard for creatures who had only known rejection. That night, Ash, Frost, and Snow huddled together on their soft blanket. They tried to believe that maybe, just maybe, one human girl could change their fate. The council chamber smelled of incense and old stone. 12 elders sat in a semicircle. Their scales bore scars and markings of honor earned over decades. Helen and Robert Brooks stood before them with Lily between them. They faced Hatchery Master Vel, who argued against them. The law is absolute, Vel declared. His voice echoed in the chamber. No alien species may claim ownership of Scareen offspring. These albinos, defective though they are, remain children of Theos. To release them to humans would dishonor our ancestors. Helen stepped forward. We propose not adoption, but a cultural guardianship program. The hatchlings will remain registered as Scareen citizens. We would serve as their caretakers and educators with regular reports submitted to your government. The eldest council member, a female named Sora with silver-tipped scales, clicked her teeth thoughtfully. An interesting proposal. But why should we trust humans with Scareen young, even defective ones? Counselor Dren, a scarred warrior with half his tail missing, leaned forward. Words mean nothing. The girl claims to bond with these rejects. Let her prove it through our traditional trials. If she succeeds, we grant guardianship. If she fails, the disposal proceeds are scheduled. Lily felt her parents tense beside her, but she spoke before they could object. I accept. What are the trials? Dren's eyes gleamed. 3 tests. Strength to prove you can control them. Wisdom to prove you understand Scareen thinking. Courage to prove you will not abandon them when they show their true nature. You have 1 day to prepare. That evening, Lily visited the babies and explained what was coming. Snow understood first. Her red eyes widened with worry. Test dangerous? She asked in her improving English. Maybe, Lily admitted, but it's our only chance. Will you help me? The 3 babies looked at each other, communicating in their silent way. Finally, Ash moved to the barrier and placed his claw against it. We help you, first friend. We protect. The next morning, a crowd gathered in the facility's training arena. Word had spread about the human girl challenging Scareen tradition. The first trial began at noon. Lily entered a circular ring, where Ash waited on the opposite side. Counselor Dren explained the rules. You must physically restrain the hatchling for 30 seconds. No weapons, no assistance. Lily approached Ash slowly. He was already larger than her, nearly 4 feet tall and heavily muscled. The crowd murmured. This was clearly impossible. But Lily and Ash had a plan. She came close and whispered, Please help me save you. Ash understood. He lunged forward as if attacking. Lily sidestepped, using his momentum to pull him off balance. They tumbled together, and Lily ended up on his back, her arms wrapped around his neck in a restraining hold. Ash could have thrown her off easily, but he went still as Lily clung to him. The judges counted aloud. 20 seconds, 25, 30. A horn sounded. Vel protested immediately. The creature allowed it. This proves nothing. But Counselor Sora raised her hand. It proves they can cooperate. That is its own form of strength. The first trial is passed. The second trial came an hour later. Lily was led to a room with a massive holographic display, showing a complex military scenario. She had to devise a strategy for victory within 10 minutes. Lily stared at the display. Her mind raced. She knew nothing about Scareen military tactics. Panic began to set in as minutes ticked away. Then she noticed Snow in the observation window, watching intently. The hatchling's tail moved in a specific pattern, a language Lily had learned over their weeks together. Snow was giving her hints, drawing invisible maps in the air. Lily followed the guidance. She identified a weak point in the enemy formation and proposed a flanking maneuver. With 1 minute remaining, she submitted her strategy. The judges analyzed it in silence. Finally, Counselor Dren spoke. This strategy mirrors a classic Scareen tactic. It would succeed. How does a human child know our military history? Lily smiled but did not reveal Snow's help. I pay attention when people teach me. The second trial was passed. The final trial came at sunset. Lily was brought to a larger enclosure, where all 3 babies waited together. The rules were simple and terrifying. She would enter with no protective gear. If the babies showed any aggression, they would be destroyed immediately. Guards with weapons surrounded the pen. Lily's hands shook as the door opened. Her parents tried to stop her, but the judges held them back. She stepped into the enclosure, and the door sealed behind her. The 3 babies stood together on the far side, watching her. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Frost chirped softly and rushed forward. The guards tensed, weapons rising. But Frost only pressed his head against Lily's stomach, a gesture of affection and trust. Ash followed, moving to her left side protectively. Snow came last, circling them all with her tail. Lily sat down on the floor. The three babies arranged themselves around her. She pulled out the storybook and began to read about a princess who befriended 3 dragons everyone else feared. She read for 5 minutes while the babies listened peacefully. The guards slowly lowered their weapons. When Lily finished, she stood up and walked to the door. The babies followed her like shadows. "Soon," she promised them. "We will be together soon." Counselor Sora stood and addressed the chamber. "The trials are complete. The human child has proven strength through cooperation, wisdom through learning, and courage through trust. I vote to grant cultural guardianship." One by one, the other counselors agreed. Only Vel voted against, but he was outnumbered. "The albinos will be released to human custody," Sora declared, "but they will wear monitor bands until they reach adulthood. Any incident of violence, any failure in their development, and they will be recalled immediately. This is not mercy. This is probation." Lily nodded, accepting the terms. Her friends were saved. That was all that mattered. The research vessel Wayfinder was not designed for 3 rapidly growing Scareen juveniles. Within the first week, they accidentally broke 2 chairs, cracked a wall panel, and shattered 3 water containers just by moving through the corridors. The crew divided into 2 camps. Some saw the babies as Lily's friends and tried to make them welcome, but others saw only danger. Engineering Chief Gordon Patterson led this group. He was a military veteran who had fought against Scareen raiders in his youth. "They're children," Helen argued during one heated discussion. "They're learning to adapt." "They're animals," Patterson shot back. "And animals follow instinct. Mark my words. Some will get hurt." The babies knew they were not wanted by everyone. They could smell fear and hear the hostile whispers. 6 months passed. The babies grew rapidly, each reaching 5 feet in height. Lily, now 16, spent every free hour teaching them about human culture and social rules. But mistakes happened. Frost did not understand privacy and walked into occupied bathrooms. Snow's questions during movie nights annoyed people. Ash's protective instincts made him growl softly when strangers approached Lily too quickly. Frost lunged forward and struck Patterson's arm with his claws. Not hard enough to injure seriously, but enough to draw blood. Patterson shouted, and alarms immediately blared. Security arrived. Patterson demanded Frost be locked up or ejected. The crew held an emergency meeting. 18 voted to return the babies to Scareen custody. 15 voted to give them another chance. 7 did not vote at all. Robert had the final decision as ship commander. He looked at his daughter and saw tears in her eyes. If he kept the babies and someone got seriously hurt, it would be his fault. But if he sent them back knowing they would be killed, how could he live with that choice? "We keep them," he said finally, "but with conditions. The albinos will undergo formal training. They will not roam unsupervised until they pass tests. And if another incident occurs, there will be no second chances." Patterson left the meeting angrily. The crew was now fractured. Lily went to the babies' quarters and found all 3 huddled together, terrified. Frost pressed himself into the corner, his white scales dull with shame. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I thought danger. I protect wrong." Lily wrapped her arms around his neck. "You protected right. Your heart was right. We just need to teach your head to understand better." The ship's counselor developed a training program. Every day for 3 hours, the babies studied human communication and conflict resolution. They watched videos and practiced appropriate responses. Slowly, carefully, they found their place. Ash helped with engineering. Frost joined security training. Snow studied medicine. A year after leaving the Scareen station, Lily turned 17. The babies were now 6 feet tall and speaking fluent English. On Lily's birthday, they bought her a gift with their small allowance. It was a crystal that refracted light into rainbow colors. "We were nothing," Snow said, presenting the gift. "You saw light inside. Thank you for looking." Lily hugged all 3 of them. They were her family in every way that mattered. 2 years after leaving the Scareen breeding station, the Wayfinder joined a convoy of research and transport vessels. They were traveling through the disputed border zone between human and Groll territories. The journey was considered safe because both governments honored a peace treaty. But space pirates did not care about treaties. Lily was 17 now, helping her mother catalog plant samples in the laboratory. Ash, Frost, and Snow had grown into young adults. Each stood nearly 7 feet tall with lean muscle and confident movements. They wore their monitor bands without complaint and had proven themselves valuable crew members. Ash helped in engineering. Frost trained with security. Snow studied medicine. The distress signal came during third shift when most of the crew slept. A colony ship carrying settlers to a new world had been attacked. Life support was failing. Hundreds of people were trapped, including families with children. The convoy's military escort was 3 hours away on patrol. The Wayfinder and 2 other civilian ships were closest, but they had minimal combat capability. Admiral Hayes, commanding the escort fleet, sent urgent orders. Assess the situation, but do not engage hostile forces. Robert Brooks assembled his senior crew in the conference room. The tactical display showed the damaged colony ship venting atmosphere from multiple breaches. Sensor scans detected Groll energy signatures, likely a raiding party looking for technology and valuable cargo. "We need to evacuate survivors," Helen said, studying the readouts. "But the raiders may still be aboard. Our security team is 5 people, none with military combat experience." Patterson spoke grimly. "The raiders will have at least a dozen armed fighters. If we send our people in, they will be slaughtered." A knock sounded on the door. Ash entered, followed by his siblings. All 3 wore serious expressions. "We volunteer," Ash said in his deep, carefully practiced voice. "We go with rescue team." Robert shook his head immediately. "Absolutely not. You are technically still minors under Scareen law, and your monitor bands report every action back to Council. Combat would violate every term of your guardianship." "People dying," Snow said softly. "Children scared. We can help." "You are not trained for combat situations," Patterson argued, though his tone was less hostile than it would have been 2 years ago. "And if something goes wrong, the political consequences will be severe." Frost stepped forward. "All life we are called weak, called useless, called defect. Please let us prove we are not. Let us show value." Lily had been silent, but now she spoke. "They are the strongest fighters we have. You know it, even if you don't want to admit it. Normal Scareen are already elite warriors. Ash, Frost, and Snow have been training constantly for 2 years. They want to prove themselves. Give them the chance." Robert looked at his daughter, then at the 3 albinos who stood tall despite their nervousness. He thought about the children trapped on that dying ship. He thought about political complications and treaty violations, and a dozen reasons to say no. Then he thought about what his daughter had taught him over the past 2 years. Sometimes the right choice was not the safe choice. "All right," he said, "but you follow orders from our security chief exactly. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. Your job is to help evacuate civilians, not hunt raiders." The rescue team assembled in the shuttle bay. 5 human security personnel, plus the 3 albinos. They wore emergency pressure suits and carried basic weapons. The plan was simple: dock with the colony ship, reach the survivors in the safe zone, and evacuate them back to the shuttle before life support failed completely. But plans changed the moment they breached the damaged airlock. The Groll had set an ambush. They were brutal creatures standing 8 feet tall with thick gray hide and savage weapons designed to cause maximum trauma. A dozen of them waited in the docking corridor, having detected the shuttle's approach. The first human through the door took a plasma bolt to the shoulder and went down screaming. The others tried to retreat, but they were pinned in the narrow corridor. The Groll advanced slowly, enjoying their prey's fear. Then Frost charged past the humans with a roar that echoed through his helmet. He moved faster than the Groll expected. His white scales made him appear like a ghost in their vision. He slammed into the nearest raider with enough force to crack armor, then spun and struck another with his reinforced tail. Ash came from the right side, using the corridor's damaged structure to climb along the wall and drop onto 2 Groll from above. His claws found weak points in their armor with surgical precision. Snow moved with her brothers, pulling wounded humans to safety while somehow dodging incoming fire. The Grohl had been expecting frightened civilians or maybe untrained security. They were not prepared for Scareen combat instincts combined with 2 years of disciplined training and desperate motivation. The ambush turned into chaos as the 3 albinos fought with coordinated precision. Frost held the main corridor alone against 8 opponents. His body took hits that would have killed a human, but only scored his scales. He fought with pure defensive focus, giving the humans time to reach cover. Ash disabled the Grohl weapon systems with a combination of brute strength and engineering knowledge, tearing apart power cells and crushing firing mechanisms. Snow, despite her smaller size, dragged 3 wounded humans to safety while dodging combat. Then she did something remarkable. She picked up a fallen raider's weapon, and using medical knowledge of Grohl anatomy, placed precise shots that disabled rather than killed. She neutralized 3 enemies without taking a single life. The battle lasted 7 brutal minutes. When the Grohl finally retreated, 4 of them lay unconscious, and the rest fled deeper into the ship. None of the humans had been killed, though 2 were seriously wounded. The 3 albinos stood guard while the security team caught their breath. "Move," Ash ordered, his voice rough from exertion. "Mission not complete. Survivors need help." They pushed deeper into the dying ship. The albinos cleared each corridor, their superior senses detecting hidden threats. They found the survivor zone where 200 terrified colonists huddled in an emergency shelter. The life support was failing, oxygen dropping to dangerous levels. The evacuation took 3 hours, multiple trips back and forth to the shuttle. The albinos carried children and elderly passengers, moving smoothly despite their own exhaustion. They shielded civilians with their bodies when secondary explosions rocked the ship. They worked without rest until every single survivor was safely aboard rescue vessels. The last to leave was Snow, who had stayed behind with Dr. Willis to treat the most critically injured. She carried a human child no older than 5. The girl's face pressed against her white scales while Snow whispered reassurances in gentle English. When the shuttle finally pulled away from the doomed colony ship, Admiral Hayes was waiting. The military escort had arrived to find civilian vessels, successfully completing a rescue that should have been impossible. The 3 Scareen albinos had done what an entire military unit would have struggled to accomplish. Hayes personally visited the Wayfinder to commend the rescue team. He stood before Ash, Frost, and Snow with genuine respect in his eyes. "I have commanded Scareen warriors before," he said. "I have never seen better. You 3 saved 200 lives today." The crew of the Wayfinder gathered to welcome them back. Even Patterson, his arm around one of the wounded security officers who the albinos had saved, nodded acknowledgement. The division that fractured the ship 2 years ago finally healed as everyone recognized the truth. The 3 rejected hatchlings were not defects. They were heroes. That night, Lily found her friends in their quarters, carefully cleaning their scales and checking each other for injuries. They were exhausted but satisfied. The monitoring bands on their wrists blinked steadily with recorded data that would be analyzed by the Scareen Council. "You are amazing," Lily said simply. "I am so proud of you." "We prove we not weak," Frost said, though pain edged his voice from untreated wounds. "We prove we have value." "You always had value," Lily reminded them. "Today you just made everyone else see it." But the rescue had consequences neither they nor Lily could predict. The footage of 3 albino Scareens saving hundreds of lives spread across communication networks. It reached human worlds and alien stations. And eventually, inevitably, it reached Theos, where Hatchery Master Vel watched the videos with complicated emotions. In the facility's newest isolation cage, 2 small albino hatchlings huddled together, waiting for their scheduled disposal. And for the first time in his long career, Vel wondered if he had been wrong about everything. 3 months after the colony's ship rescue, the Wayfinder received a priority transmission from the Scareen homeworld. Hatchery Master Vel appeared on the screen. His emerald scales showed signs of age that had not been visible during their first meeting. His voice carried a strange mixture of pride and desperation. "I request audience with the albino trio and their human guardian," he he said formally. A matter of urgent importance requires their presence on Theos. Robert Brooks was immediately suspicious. The last time we dealt with your council, they nearly killed Ash, Frost, and Snow. Why should we trust you now? Vel's scales darkened with shame. Because I was wrong. Because my people face extinction. Without their help. Please allow me to explain. The full situation emerged over the next hour. A genetic disorder was spreading through screen hatcheries across all colony worlds. The condition caused severe immune deficiency, and infant mortality had climbed to 40%. Scientists have studied the problem for months, searching for the source. They found it in the genetic sequences that govern scale pigmentation. The same genes that produce normal green and brown coloring were linked to immune system development. Over centuries of selective breeding that favored perfect coloration, the screen had accidentally weakened their species' genetic diversity. But albinos like Ash, Frost, and Snow possess different genetic structures. Their immune systems developed through alternative pathways, making them naturally resistant to the disorder. The genes the screen had spent generations trying to eliminate might be the only thing that could save their species. We need tissue samples and genetic mapping, Vel explained, his voice strained. We need to understand how their immune systems function differently. And we need them to help us locate other albinos who may have been hidden or abandoned over the years. Lily listened to the request with mixed emotions. Part of her wanted to refuse, to make the screen suffer for their prejudice. But another part, the part that had spent years teaching compassion, knew that children were dying while adults argued about pride. What do you three want to do? She asked, turning to her friends. Ash, Frost, and Snow held a silent conversation with small movements and shared glances. Finally, Snow spoke for them all. We go. We help. Not because they deserve it, but because hatchlings do not choose their parents' mistakes. The journey back to Theos took 3 weeks. The albinos spent the time preparing themselves emotionally for returning to a place that had rejected them. Lily worried about them constantly, knowing the psychological weight of facing their traumatic past. The orbital station had changed in small ways, but remained fundamentally the same. The breeding facilities still hummed with activity, though the nursery halls were quieter now with fewer healthy hatchlings. They docked at the same port where Lily's family had first arrived years ago, back when 3 small white hatchlings were locked in an isolation cage. Vel met them at the airlock. He had aged noticeably, stress and guilt wearing on him. He greeted the 3 albinos with proper screen formal respect, lowering his head in acknowledgement of their status. It was a gesture normally reserved for honored warriors and elders. Welcome home, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. This was never home, Frost replied coldly. Home is where we are wanted. This is just where we hatched. The research facility had been prepared for their arrival. Screen geneticists worked alongside human medical specialists to conduct careful non-invasive tests. They took tissue samples, mapped genetic sequences, and ran simulations. The albinos cooperated fully, though their monitor bands tracked their stress levels climbing steadily. The results confirmed what scientists hoped. The albino genetic structure included redundant immune pathways that could be isolated and potentially introduced into the general population through carefully managed breeding programs. It would take generations to fully repair the damage. But there was now hope where before there had been only despair. Counselor Sora, now the eldest member after several retirements, requested a private meeting with Ash, Frost, Snow, and Lily. They gathered in the same council chamber, where Lily had undergone her trials years before. You have given us a gift we do not deserve, Sora said quietly. You owe us nothing, yet you came anyway. This is a definition of honor that we claim to value, but rarely demonstrate. We came for the children, Snow said simply. They should not suffer for mistakes made before they hatched. Sora's scales shifted in a pattern that indicated deep thought, which brings me to a difficult request. While examining facility records, we discovered 2 albino hatchlings were born during this cycle. Under our old laws, they would have been disposed of already, but the administrator delayed, uncertain after witnessing your achievements. They remain in isolation, awaiting decision. Lily felt her heart clench. 2 more rejected hatchlings locked away and frightened, just like Ash, Frost, and Snow had been. She looked at her three friends and saw her own emotions reflected in their eyes. "We wish to see them," Ash said firmly. The isolation wing looked exactly as it had 3 years ago. The same harsh lighting, the same cold metal cages, the same atmosphere of neglect. In the corner cage, 2 small white hatchlings huddled together. They were even younger than Ash and his siblings had been, barely 2 months old. The baby albino scrambled the back of their cage when the group approached, making distressed chirping sounds. They had learned already that visitors meant nothing good. Lily felt tears sting her eyes at the familiar scene, but this time the visitors were different. Ash knelt down in front of the cage and spoke in gentle screen. "We're like you. White scales, red eyes. We were unwanted too, but we survived. We found family. You are not alone." The baby hatchlings stopped retreating. They stared at the 3 large albinos with wonder, seeing themselves reflected in these strong, confident adults. Snow made soft clicking sound of comfort, while Frost carefully pushed a treat through the feeding slot. Lily understood what needed to happen before anyone said a word. She turned to Vel, who had followed them to the isolation wing. "We will take them, add them to our guardianship." Vel nodded slowly. "I expected no less. The council has already prepared the paperwork. But I must ask, how will you manage 5 screen juveniles? The youngest 2 will need constant care." "We figure out," Ash said firmly, "like Lily's family figured out how to care for us. No one should grow up thinking they are broken. We teach them truth. They are perfect exactly as they are." The legal process took 2 days, during which Lily and the others visited the baby albinos constantly. They brought soft blankets, good food, and most importantly, attention and affection. The little ones slowly began to trust, especially when Snow stayed overnight in their cage to comfort them. On the 3rd day, Counselor Sora made an announcement that would change Screen culture forever. She stood before the full council and declared the immediate end of all policies regarding albino hatchlings. No more isolation, no more disposal, no more treating genetic variation as defect. "The galaxy watched 3 albinos save 200 lives," Sora said, her voice carrying through every speaker in the facility. "They proved our prejudice wrong through action and honor. We will not make this mistake again. All hatchlings, regardless of scale color, will receive equal care and opportunity." The council voted unanimously. Vel himself proposed they establish a new program to locate and rehabilitate any albinos who have been hidden or abandoned across Screen territories. It would be called the Brooks Initiative, named after the human girl who taught a warrior species about compassion. Lily stood with Ash, Frost, and Snow as the announcement broadcast across Screen worlds. The 2 baby albinos were in Snow's arms, content and safe. The 5 of them represented something that should have been impossible. Rejected creatures finding not just survival but purpose. That evening, as they prepared to leave Theos for the last time, a small group gathered near the shuttle. Young Screen, Normal, and Albino together, came to see the heroes depart. One child, a little albino female barely 3 months old, approached Lily nervously. "Is true?" The child asked in halting English. "You chose to be friends with rejects?" Lily knelt down to the child's level and smiled. "I did not choose to be friends with rejects. I chose to see people that everyone else was too blind to notice. That is a big difference." The child's red eyes widened with understanding and hope. "I see, too." "Yes," Lily said gently. "You will see many things others miss. Your eyes work differently, so you notice things they cannot. That is not weakness. That is gift." The shuttle lifted off, carrying 7 passengers back to the Wayfinder. Lily sat between Ash and Snow with Frost, holding both babies carefully in his lap. They looked down at Theos, shrinking below them, a world that had rejected them, but could no longer define them. "What will we name the little ones?" Lily asked. The 3 albinos considered carefully. "Hope," Snow said finally, indicating the female baby. "And Light," Ash added, touching the male baby's small head, "because they live in a world we helped change. They will never know the darkness we knew." The Wayfinder's crew welcomed the 2 new additions with preparation and patience. They had learned much over the past 3 years about acceptance and growth. The babies cried off in those first weeks, adjusting to strange surroundings. But they were never alone. They had 5 protective older siblings, a ship full of adoptive aunts and uncles, and one determined human girl who had proven that love could cross any boundary. Years later, long after Lily grew up and started her own work helping troubled youth across species, people would ask her about the famous albino Scareen who had changed their society. They wanted to know the secret of how she had achieved the impossible. Her answer was always the same and always simple. I asked for a friend. They said yes. Everything else followed from that one simple choice. And in universities, military academies, and hatcheries across 100 worlds, they taught the story of the 3 albino hatchlings, who were rejected by everyone until one human girl looked past their scales and saw their souls. It became a lesson about prejudice, compassion, and the courage to challenge traditions that cause harm. But for Lily and her family, the story was never about lessons or fame. It was about 7 beings who found each other in the darkness and chose to create light together. It was about proving that family has nothing to do with biology and everything to do with choice. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is see someone that the world has decided not to look at, and then simply, beautifully refuse to look away.